So, hey guys, we are now back for part 5. And where we kind of left off was Justin had admitted that they were planning to leave Jones Works, him and Wayfarer planned to leave Jones Works and follow Jen Abel. So, Stephanie Jones's lawyer, Maureen Shah, is actually asking Justin, when exactly did you make this decision? You know, was it before Jen left or after? So that is where we left off. Okay. So Justin's sort of one of the last things that Justin said was, "Can you help me out with when she left Jones Works, or if she was fired from Jones Works? Because you had said earlier she was fired." So Shah says, "Well, I will ask you what you understand about that in a little bit, but this text, let me ask it this way. Do you have a recollection of discussing and deciding that you were going to go with Jen, like one day before she actually left, or like a month before she actually left?" Shapiro objects. "Can you help me with when she actually left?" "Sure. She left on August 21st of 2024. I can't give you. I don't know. I don't know exactly when." "Were you aware she was planning to leave Jones Works before she actually left?" "I was made aware via Jamie that she had given Stephanie her notice. And so Jamie let me know she had given notice and that she would be staying on through the end of the film promotion." "Do you have a sense of when Jamie relayed that to you?" "I don't. But all I remember was that she had given notice. She had let Stephanie know." "Do you have the impression that you found out about her giving notice shortly after she gave notice?" I couldn't answer that." "Okay. After you were informed by Jamie that Jen gave notice to Stephanie, did you immediately decide to go with Jen when she left?" "No." "How long after you became aware that Jen planned to leave Jones Works did you make the decision to go with her?" "I think Jamie and I had a conversation about it. I think it was something that we immediately said, oh, this is something we have to figure out. Like, because we had Matthew at Jones Works, but it was really just Jen and Matthew. And Jen had been with us pretty much since the beginning. So it was one of those, it was on the list of conversations that Jamie and I had to have. Like, well, what do we do? Do we stay? I didn't know what she was going to do or where she was going at the time, but it was definitely a conversation. I don't think it was decided immediately. At some point between when you found out that she had given notice and when she actually walked out the door at Jones Works, you had decided, yes, that you were going to go with her? Yes. Okay. And you had decided that in consultation with Jamie and Tara? Yes. Did you make Stephanie Jones aware of that decision when you decided it? Shapiro objects. I don't even think we made Jen aware of that decision. Did you not? No. Objection. Okay, when did you make Jen aware of that decision? I don't know. I don't remember telling Jen, probably because I was never asked. I don't know when I told Jen I would go with her. Did you ever tell Jen that you would go with her? I'm sure I did. Personally? I'm sure I did, yeah. Okay. Do you have any recollection of that? I think I do. Yes, I have a recollection of a phone call with Jen. And what is your recollection of that phone call? It was about one of the other 1,000 things that we were dealing with, and I let her know that Jamie had let me know that she was given her notice, or she gave her notice. My memory of that call was her saying and being very clear that she's sure that they will find someone great to replace her. It had nothing to do with us. And she wanted to make sure she stayed on for me because she knew how intense of a time this was for me until the movie was done being promoted. And she went out of her way to almost say, like, everything's going to be fine. Steph's great. Matthew's great. It was like that kind of conversation. Do you remember when in time this was? I don't, but I imagine it was within a week or two of whenever Jamie told me. Shapiro, counsel, can we take a short break? Shah, sure. So then they go off the record and then come back on. Before the break, we were talking about a scenario planning document that you had received from TAG. Do you recall that? Oh, sorry, almost. Try one more time. Before the break, we were talking about a scenario planning document that you received from TAG. Yes. Do you recall whether you ever received more than one version of that scenario planning document? I don't. Do you recall whether it was updated or revised at any point in time? I don't. Okay, to your best recollection, you only recall seeing one version of a scenario planning document. Is that correct? Yes. Do you remember that you didn't see any other versions, or you just don't remember one way or another? Objection. I don't believe I saw a second version. Okay. After you were provided with the scenario planning document, describe for me the series of events to your recollection in terms of how you came to hire TAG. Shapiro objects. Justin, forgive me, can you ask one more time? Sure. At some point, after you received the scenario planning document for TAG, you ultimately hired TAG, right? The company did, yes. Yes. Is it your testimony that Wayfarer hired TAG? Yes, I believe so. Okay. Do you have an understanding of whether you personally also hired TAG? I don't think I personally hired anyone. Okay. And when Wayfarer hired TAG, what was your understanding of what TAG was being brought on to do? My understanding was that TAG was being brought on to be a crisis public relations representatives. To your understanding, was TAG given any instructions by you or by Wayfarer in terms of how to proceed once you hired them? I believe so. I believe that Jamie was in communication with them. And do you know what those instructions were? I can only speak to the instructions that I gave Jamie, or at any time I spoke to Jen or on the calls, which was to plan and to just try to get good press out there for the movie. How involved were you personally in discussing with anyone at TAG the type of PR strategy you all should be employing? I don't know. I think I had ideas. I'm not sure how many conversations were happening versus what ideas I was sharing. I was kind of in and out. Do you have any recollection of any ideas that you had shared with TAG? I mean, I really wanted to focus, not just TAG, but also Jennifer Abel. I really wanted to focus on amplifying the voices of survivors. I wanted to focus on the DV. I wanted to focus on the movie and not all of this speculation and drama. Did you personally ever have any conversations with Stephanie Jones about the instructions that Wayfarer was given to TAG in terms of how to proceed? I don't think I had any real conversations with Stephanie Jones outside of the texting through July and August. Do you recall ever communicating with Stephanie Jones, whether on text or in conversation, about the instructions that Wayfarer had given TAG about how to proceed? I don't believe so. My memory of texts with Stephanie Jones were focused on letting her know that I was not a part of this decision to hire anybody. I wanted to stay out of it. It was too much for me, and I know she sent me a really beautiful message of love and support before the premiere. That's my memory of talking with Stephanie. Okay. I think she was on vacation somewhere. Do you have any understanding of whether anyone at Wayfarer had any communications, text, conversations with Stephanie Jones about what Wayfarer was instructing TAG to do as a crisis PR? I don't know. Okay, going to show you a document marked Exhibit 17. Should I get rid of this? Yes, thank you. It's a text thread between Henny Grace, who is you, Jennifer Abel, Justin Baldoni. I think that's it. So this looks like a text thread between you and Jennifer Abel. On August 5th, 2024. Do you see this? I do. Okay, and Jennifer Abel, do you recall this text thread? Vaguely, but I know this was in the New York Times from what I was told. Did you ever read the New York Times article? I did not. How did you come to learn about it? The New York Times article? I would say it felt like minutes after I received an email from who I believe was Mr. Gottlieb. I got an email from the New York Times saying they were running a story the next morning. And then the next morning, there were quite a lot of text messages from people worried about me and concerned. So that's how I learned about it. If you never read the New York Times article, do you have any basis to say whether or not anything contained in it was true or untrue? Shapiro objects. My understanding of the New York Times article was that it was taken from the CRD complaint, and I was never interviewed or asked for my opinion or my side of the story. So from the few sentences in the headline, that's what I was able to gather. What was you able to gather? That the information they got was from Ms. Lively's CRD complaint, but not from anything that came from me or my side of the story. Which, and I would very much disagree with the things that Ms. Lively put in her CRD complaint as being untrue. Okay, but sitting here today, can you think of a statement or portion of the New York Times article itself that you can identify as being true or untrue? I believe the New York Times article insinuated that I had launched a smear campaign against Ms. Lively, which is completely untrue. I believe it said that I sexually harassed Ms. Lively, which is also very untrue. So there's two untrue statements. Apart from those two statements or concepts as contained in the New York Times article, is there anything else that was contained in the New York Times article that sitting here today you can identify as either true or untrue? I would be happy to read it while we're sitting together and go through all the things I feel are untrue, but I don't know that would be the best use of our time. I agree with you. It would not be. So based on what you know about it today, can you identify any other statement or portion of that article that you can identify as true or untrue? I can't comment on the rest of the article at this time. Because you don't know what it said? Because I need to go through it to tell you what I think is true and untrue. Okay. If you look at the document, Jennifer Abel starts by saying, Sony is having a hard time with the word friction. They think it will be taken out as clickbait. Do you see that? Yes. Do you have an understanding as to what she was referring to there? I believe I do. What is that understanding? I believe in an interview I spoke that every set has friction, but sometimes that friction ends up being something that is great for the film, and I think that's what she was referring to. And did you understand that Sony did not like the use of the word friction? I believe that's what Miss Abel was telling me in this text. Okay. Did you have an understanding around this time that Sony had any other disagreements with things that you said in interviews promoting the film? I don't know about disagreements. I know that there was always a conversation around how much of the film should be promoted, using the word survivor or talking about domestic violence, and that had been a multi-year conversation. And you thought more of that content should be used in promoting the film, and Sony wanted less of that content to be used, is that right? Shapiro objects. Justin, Sony had initial apprehension about making it an issue movie, and I tried to explain to them that you cannot run from the fact that this is an issue movie. And this was the very reason I was making the movie, and it would be a disservice to all the people whose lives were changed from the film for us to pretend like that's not what the movie's about. Did Sony have ultimate approval over the film's marketing plan? I need to know what you mean by approval. Was Sony deeply involved in conversations with Wayfarer and the cast about the film's marketing plan? I believe there were many conversations that Sony was having about the marketing plan. They were in charge of marketing. They were the company that was paying for the marketing of the movie. Okay, then if you go back to this document, Jennifer Abel says, they obviously don't know about our strategy, but let's stick to the words of challenge. Do you see that? Yes. What is your understanding of what she means when she says they obviously don't know about our strategy? I think our strategy was to ensure that we were only saying positive things and not drawing any attention to what was very clearly, at the time, an intentional plan to draw attention to friction, if you will. An intentional plan by whom? I can only imagine Miss Lively. And then you send Miss Abel a text message where you say, this is what we would need. Yes. And you attach a screenshot of a post about Hailey Bieber's history of bullying many women. Do you see that? Yes. What did you mean by this is what we would need? So I believe at the time we were going through scenario planning, and like any plan, you have scenario A, scenario B, C, D. What if this happens, or this happens, or this happens? And I had seen this post and I resonated with the word bullying. And I sent it to Jen saying, in the event that Miss Lively come out and said lies about me, then we would need to come forward with the truth. And it was your suggestion that you would come forward with allegations that Miss Lively was a bully. It was my understanding that I would come forward with what my truth was, and I felt very bullied. Was it your intention to suggest that you should be coming forward with statements that Miss Lively was a bully to other women? No, this had nothing to do with the other women. But this is just what this article was about. And this article, by its own words, is about Hailey Bieber's history of bullying many women, right? Yes, I see that. Okay. And it was your suggestion that in some scenario where Miss Lively was to come forward with what you felt were lies about you, you would want to come forward in the press with allegations like those contained in this post that you sent? Shapiro objects. No, not exactly. So how would you correct that? So if Miss Lively were to come forward with lies about me, then I would want to come forward with my truth. So it was about me, my experience. I don't know what this article was about. I didn't actually read it. I saw it. I saw the word bullying. At the time, I felt very bullied and scared and very alone. And we were planning for all of the various things that could happen. That's why I said would as the operative word. This was a part of a scenario planning document, and the hope was that the movie was going to come out and everything was going to be fine and everyone was going to have success and we would never need anything, and that's the truth. Is it your testimony that when you saw and sent this post to Jen Abel, you saw the word history of bullying, but you did not continue to read where it said many women? Shapiro objects. This has nothing to do with women. I don't know if Miss Lively has bullied other women. Spoiler, she has. Did you read any press coverage that come out in August of 2024 that did accuse Miss Lively of bullying other women? Later on, I did. Women including Shusty Fleur, I believe. I learned about that name, yes. Okay, and women including Leighton Meester from Gossip Girl, yes. I didn't read anything about her being a bully to Leighton Meester. Okay, are you aware that the article that Brianna Butler Coslow testified under oath in this case that she leaked and helped to plant in the Daily Mail about Miss Lively contained allegations that Miss Lively had bullied Shusty Fleur and had bullied Leighton Meester? Shapiro objects. Justin, I was unaware of that. I was also unaware that she bullied Leighton Meester. And you were unaware of that even though you had and you were unaware of that even though that you here suggested to Jen Abel that what you would need in the event that Miss Lively disclosed anything negative about you is articles similar to this one that says Hailey Bieber's history of bullying many women. Shapiro objects. Justin, I disagree with the way that question was phrased. Do you think that's just a coincidence? Shapiro objects. That what is? That you suggested that you would need articles about similar to Hailey Bieber's history of bullying many women, and then tag the company that you employed as crisis PR did in fact plant an article about Blake Lively bullying other women. Shapiro objects. So what's the question? The question is, do you think that's a coincidence? Shapiro objects. I don't think it's a coincidence that I felt bullied, and then it seems the internet dug up true stories of how Miss Lively bullied other people. So it just shows that I wasn't the only one who was bullied. That's a fantastic answer. When you say the internet dug up stories, what do you mean by that? It seemed like people came forward with their own experiences of being bullied to the extent that I never had to. Which is true. Kirsty put up her own video of that interview with Blake Lively. Okay. And Blake Lively has since acknowledged that, Wayfarer and their counsel never spoke to Shusty flat, which is something that Shusty herself has maintained from day one. Okay. Okay, how does this fit with the strategy that you were discussing with Miss Abel and Tag about promoting positive coverage of the film? How does this fit in? This is part of it, like I said earlier, a what happens if scenario. So if positive doesn't work, then you would move on to something like this. Shapiro objects. If positive doesn't work, how? What do you mean when you say this is part of a what happens if scenario? Justin, as I testified earlier, if Miss Lively were to capitalize on her threats that her and Mr. Reynolds made through her agent to my agent, to me, and plant negative stories, which I was told she was already doing, such as I'm part of a cult or that I'm a predator, and continue to come forward with lies, then we would have to have some sort of plan. As they are Hollywood titans, I am very clearly a nobody as it relates, or at least what they feel I am, or what my former agency thought of me, as I was also dropped very quickly per their request. So we need some sort of plan if someone is attacking you with big guns and missiles and dropping bombs on you. In our day and age, you can't just die. I have a family I have to protect. I have a company that I started. So we were planning for what would happen if she were to attack me and to lie about me and hurt my reputation. That's all it was. And under that text where you send Jen Abel the screenshot of the article about Hailey Bieber, Jen Abel responds, yes, I literally just spoke to Melissa about this on the break, about what we discussed last night for social and digital. And then she says, focus on Reddit, TikTok, IG, Instagram, obviously. Do you see that? I do. Okay, she mentions what we discussed last night for social and digital. Is that a discussion that you were part of? I have honestly no idea what she's talking about here, so I don't think I was a part of that call. I don't think she's inferring that her and I discussed anything. Did you and she discuss anything about this? Not that, no. Not like that. I don't remember any conversation with Jen about this. Do you recall any conversation with Jen or Melissa about social or digital strategy? No, I was very hard to reach during this time. Most of my communication was via text, which the world has. Do you understand what the words social and digital mean in that context? I would have assumed they mean the same thing, so I don't know. I still don't know the difference between social and digital because social is inherently digital, so I don't know. Do you understand that social means social media? Yes. Okay, on the internet. Hence, it's digital, which is what I meant with what I said. Like, social media is digital, so I don't know what digital is. Did you understand that social and digital included things like Reddit, TikTok, and Instagram? I didn't know anything about Reddit, but I would assume that it included TikTok and Instagram. Okay. Do you recall ever having a conversation with either Jen or Melissa after you sent this Hailey Bieber post where you explained to them that you didn't mean planting stories about Blake bullying other women, you meant coming forward with stories about Blake bullying you? Shapiro objects. I don't remember any conversation. I know Jen and I were together doing press somewhere around this time, and I know Jen knew it was very clear that I wanted to do nothing that would harm Miss Lively or this film. And that were the only the only times we would do anything is if we were attacked. And we were attacked and we still didn't do anything. Okay. But do you recall ever having any communication with either Jen or Melissa where you explained to them when I sent you this post about Hailey Bieber, I wasn't suggesting stories about Blake bullying other women. I was suggesting coming forward with my experience about Blake bullying me. Shapiro objects. Did you ever explain that to them? Shapiro objects. I think it was very clear in my relationship with Jen that she knew exactly what I meant when I sent this, and that there was never a directive to do anything. So I would be very surprised if anything was actually done. But do you recall having any conversations or communications with her or Melissa where you expressed that? Shapiro objects. That specific thing? Yes. I don't have any specific recollections of that. Okay. When Jen says, I literally just spoke to Melissa about this on the break, about when we discussed last night, about what we discussed last night for social and digital. Do you have any understanding about what was the substance of Jen's conversation with Melissa on this topic? I wasn't on the call, so I don't know. Is this the only idea that you've ever expressed to either Jen or Melissa or anyone at TAG about how you might combat stories that Blake and Ryan might come forward with what you believed were lies? Shapiro objects. I don't know. I'm not sure. Do you recall discussing the potential around stories that Blake and Ryan crossed the picket line or otherwise violated the writer's strike by rewriting certain scenes in the movie? Shapiro objects. I think I do, yes. Okay, do you recall communicating to Jen and Melissa that one idea might be flipping the narrative on Ryan to make it seem like when he rewrote the rooftop scene in the script, in the movie, he was mansplaining how to write a script to a female scriptwriter? Shapiro objects. I don't remember exactly what you said, no. How do you remember it? I remember an article came out, or essentially it was like a source said that Ryan thought the script was a disaster and that he had to save it. So they were putting out articles that were basically saying the film was a mess and he had to come in and save it. And I believe we had learned at the premiere, at least I had learned the following day, I was doing an interview and I was told that Miss Lively said that Mr. Reynolds wrote the rooftop scene, which was news to me as the director. And in the moment, instead of saying that didn't happen to the people / person, I just said how great Ryan was. I didn't want to say anything to contradict that, but there was already an existing narrative that was out there. And so I do remember passing on a message from my partner who had suggested something to that effect, because essentially if the script was a mess, then he would be saying that the writer, who was a female who worked her ass off for years on this to get it right, clearly didn't know what she was doing, which I completely disagreed with. So flipping a narrative was meant an existing narrative that was already being put out by, I would say, the other side. What did the fact that the writer was a female have to do with any of that? Well, again, I was passing on a text message from my business partner who was suggesting flipping the narrative. Before we leave this Exhibit 17, I may have asked you this before, but for the record, do you have any recollection of discussing any of the scenario planning that was going on that we were just talking about with Stephanie Jones? I don't have any recollection of talking with Stephanie Jones about scenario planning. Okay, this one, please. Are you aware of whether anyone at Wayfarer had any conversations with Stephanie Jones about the type of scenario planning that you were discussing with Jen Abel and TAG? I'm unaware. Okay, I'm handing you what's been marked as Exhibit 18. It's a text thread between you, Melissa, and Jen Abel dated August 15th, 2024. Okay. Is this the idea from your partner, Steve Sauritz, about flipping the narrative that you were just testifying, discussing flipping the narrative about? Can I have a second to read it, please? Of course. Okay. So is this the substance of the idea that you were just talking about that came from your partner, Steve Sauritz, about flipping the narrative? Flipping the script, sorry. Yes. And that included flipping the script from Ryan, saying, script was a disaster and he saved the movie, to something about Ryan claiming the female hired was a female writer, didn't know how to tackle a female film, etc. Do you see that? Yes. This idea that this was a female writer and a female film, and what was Ryan Reynolds, and that what Ryan Reynolds was saying was essentially misogynistic. Did that come from Steve Sauritz? Shapiro objects. I think I said here that my partner Steve has asked about this, so I was passing that along. So this idea, something about Ryan claiming the female hired was a feminist writer, didn't know how to tackle a female film, etc., came from Steve. That was what was passed on to me. Did you use any judgment about whether or not that was a good idea before you passed it along? Shapiro objects. I think it's implied in him saying the script was a disaster, so I just pass it along. I didn't disagree with him. You didn't disagree with Mr. Saueritz's idea? Is that what you mean? I didn't disagree with what Mr. Saueritz was saying in terms of what Ryan was inferring when he called the script a disaster. Meaning that Ryan was essentially acting misogynistically. Objection. One could infer if he's saying the script was a disaster. And one could infer that simply from the fact that it was a female writer who wrote the script. And a female author, female writer, and yeah. Did you rewrite any portions of the script that the female scriptwriter wrote? Did I rewrite any portions of the script? Along with Miss Lively, I did, yes. I think I gotta say, Shah is asking these are tough questions. They're good questions, though. Do you think it can be inferred that you were acting misogynistic because it was a female book author and a female scriptwriter, and you were a man who was tinkering with that script? Objection. I wish I didn't tinker with that script, but I had no choice. Okay, then it goes on to say, and she reads, and the fact they saved the script from what they think is a disaster after we had a green-lit script and was a strike basically implies they were scabs. Do you see that? Before I go on, though, I am just going to go back and say, right, this bit here where she's asking, well, you're a man and you messed around with the script. There's a stark difference between Justin Baldoni, the director of the film that is being produced by the company he co-owns, right? There's a stark difference between Justin Baldoni making some changes to the film versus Ryan Reynolds, a nobody who has fuck all to do with this movie, doing it covertly, like changing the script covertly behind everyone's back. And then going around and saying, well, the script was shit and I had to come in and save it. And let's not forget, right, when we're talking about misogyny, yeah, just to remind everyone of how the rooftop scene, the sequence of events of how that got changed, right? Christy Hall herself said it was a difficult scene because there was a lot she had to keep in, but she had to shorten it. So it was like there was a wrestle in her own mind about what you take out. Then they had the script ready to go. Then Blake Lively come in with her talk of dragons and I've been overlooked in the film industry forever and a day. Can you let me have a go at this script, please? Can you give me a chance? Because I, as a woman, keep getting overlooked because I'm a woman, right? Justin Baldoni said, okay, fine. Send me something. We'll have a look at it. He then suggested, when she did that, that they use bits of her stuff and bits of his or Christy Hall stuff, right? That wasn't enough. No, she had to get him over to the apartment where she strong-armed him with Taylor Swift. And then got her own way. And then at the end of all of that, at the premiere, after the film's released to the world, Blake Lively announces casually that she didn't even rewrite the script. It wasn't her. It was her husband, who is now, kind of his spinning the narrative that, well, it wasn't a very good script, so I had to come and save it. So if you want to talk about, is there misogyny there? Yes. Blake Lively used it as a victim card, and then Ryan Reynolds come in and did it behind the backs of the female writer. And not just the female writer, the male director. So I think there's too much of this whole, is a woman, a man can't say anything against a woman. It's misogynistic for a man to suggest changes to a script that a woman's written. I think that's ridiculous. I'm saying that as a woman. You know, a man and a woman collaborating together on a film is perfectly fine, normal. It should be normalized. But what I'm saying is Blake Lively used misogyny as a victim card to get Baldoni to agree to making a single change in the script. She claimed that she was going to be the one writing the script. She was the one who had been, as a female, overlooked by, all her acting career. She'd been overlooked because she was a woman. And that is how she brokered an agreement with Baldoni that she would rewrite the rooftop scene. And when he said, he tried to compromise and say, well, we'll use a bit of yours and a bit of mine, or a bit of Christy Hall's, that wasn't enough. But that turned out to be a lie. She never rewrote the script, the rooftop scene. It was Ryan Reynolds the whole time. She just misrepresented that fact until the film was already out and, there was nothing anyone could do about it. So when we're talking about misogyny, I think it's, I think it's ridiculous. Okay. So back to where I'll just read that a little bit again. I felt like that was a thought I just had to share, right? Because it really annoys me that so much is being made of, well, what did you mean by this? And, what did you mean by, is Ryan Reynolds really misogynistic? And actually, I think, yes, he is. That is my opinion. I think he is misogynistic. I do. And I think Blake Lively is happy to pretend that she is a victim of misogyny. Because it wasn't to get her way, it was to get her husband's way. If she was capable of writing a script, then why didn't she? Lack of talent, maybe, but okay. And the rewrite of the script, I mean, it didn't save the film. The rewrite of the script was shit. If you read the book, it's like, it just makes no sense to be talking about bloody cherries in that situation. Anyway, right, okay, I'm off my soapbox. So we're back to Maureen Shah. Okay, and then he goes on to say, and then she reads, and the fact that they saved the script from what they think is a disaster after we had a greenlit script and was a strike. I don't know if that's right there. Sorry, I'm reading it as it's written, but sometimes it doesn't always make sense. I'm just going to say that the Writers Guild strike basically implies they were scabs. Do you see that? Justin, yes. And then if you flip the page, you write, which we could 100% lead them to. Do you see that? Yes. That last part, which we should 100% lead them to. Was that your idea, or were you still relaying to what Steve meant? I don't know. When you say which we should 100% lead them to, do you mean lead reporters to? I actually don't know what I mean here. What's your best guess? Shapiro objects. I don't know. No idea? I don't know what I meant. And then you write, it's a man coming in to say this female writer sucks and I need to save it. Let him drown in his own pool. Do you see that? Yes. Is that the sum and substance of the idea that you were relating? Which part? The pool part or the other part? All of it. It seems to be that way, yes. In other words, this is something he created. Like, he came out with a story about this in the first place. This was not something that we came out with and wanted to talk about. Okay. And are you essentially saying here that because he came out with this story, let's flip it against him and make him look like a misogynist? I think those are your words. I'm asking if you agree with that interpretation and that idea. I don't believe I do. You don't think that the idea that Mr. Sarowitz was relaying was because they came out with this story, let's flip it against them and essentially make Ryan look like a misogynist? Objection. I don't believe we had to make Ryan look like a misogynist. That wasn't my question. Shapiro objects. That was my answer. Ooh. Okay. Do you disagree with the interpretation that the idea that Mr. Sarowitz was relaying was because Ryan had come out with a story about rewriting that scene? You should use his words against him and make him look like a misogynist. Shapiro objects. I disagree with what you said because I don't know of a story that come out about Ryan rewriting a scene. What basis did you have to believe at the time that Ryan Reynolds had actually said the things that were being reported about here that you're discussing? Objection. I'm not sure. You can't remember what basis you had to think that he actually said these things? I believe that there were many articles that were coming out about how he saved the movie. Do you believe that the press is always accurate? Shapiro, objection. Are you asking me now or then? Both. I think as I sit here today, the press is very inaccurate oftentimes. I think at the time I might have had a more optimistic view of the press. Did you essentially take those articles at their word? I don't know. Other than the reporting that was going on at the time about Mr. Reynolds or Miss Lively, about what Mr. Reynolds or Miss Lively had said about this, do you have any other basis to understand what they had actually said? I'm not sure. Was this also part of this scenario planning that you were discussing? I'm unsure. How does flipping the narrative in the way that I suggested here reconcile with the view that you would be putting out only positive stories? Because it has to do with a defensive measure. So if we're talking about something that was an offensive measure, then flipping an existing narrative would not be us doing anything offensively. It would be us defending. And again, this was me passing something on. Do you recall testifying earlier about whether Melissa Nathan ever encouraged you to leave about whether Melissa Nathan ever encouraged you to leave Jones Works with Jen Abel when Jen Abel left? At this point, I remember some of that, and I would love for you to refresh my memory more. Okay. Sure. Am I passing this one on? Yes, thank you. I'm handing you what has been marked as Exhibit 19. It's a text thread between Melissa Nathan and Jen Abel dated August 19th, 2024. And I just want you to read the first page, if you will. You can read the rest of it, but I'm only going to ask you about the first page. Okay. Okay, and at the top, Melissa writes, just had a nice conversation with Justin, just him and me. I explained to him a few things. And then she goes on to explain what she explained to you. And then she says, I ended it with, I'm just going to step out of line before I go to bed and tell you Jen is amazing. She's so loyal. She loves you so much. And you have to go with her. And he was like, oh my God, of course, I'm going with her. Do you see that? I do. Do you remember having that conversation with Melissa Nathan? Very vaguely. What do you remember about that conversation? I remember it was mostly about, I was thinking she had a conversation with Leslie Sloan, which I found shocking because I just found it very surprising. And she said it was actually, I think she said it was a nice conversation. And then I just remember a brief exchange at the very end. But I wouldn't characterize it the way she's saying it. How do you remember that part differently? I remember her saying how much Jen cares about me, but I don't remember her ever saying you have to go with her or egging me on or anything like that, because I was already planning on following her wherever she was going. So there was no this, if I may, this to me looks more of what I've seen you show me, which isn't like an exaggeration or inflation of conversations. Maybe her trying to show Jen she has her back. I don't know, but that wasn't what the conversation was exactly. Okay. We discussed this a little bit earlier, but what was behind your decision to leave with Jen Abel when Jen left Jones Works? Objection. It wasn't any one thing. I think the major thing, it would have been if I was at William Morris, maybe I should use a different agency. If I was at an agency and I'd had an agent for 4 or 5 years and I talked to that agent every day and that agent was soliciting work for me and the agent called me and said, hey, I'm going to a different agency, my loyalty would be with the agent that I had built the relationship with versus the agency. And that's how I viewed the situation with Jen and Stephanie Jones. Even if I had a great relationship with the owner of the agency, my day-to-day relationship was with Jen Abel. And is this what you just relayed to me, the reason that you personally decided to go with Jen Abel when she left Jones Works? Yes. And is what you just relayed to me consistent with the reason that you, Jamie Heath, and Tara Hanks collectively made to go with Jen Abel when she left Jones Works? I think that's the biggest reason. I think we were, regardless of anything that was happening with the movie or not with the movie, if there would have been no movie, I think that would have been the decision. I didn't understand that answer. What do you mean by that? Maybe it's because I didn't understand the question. Sure. You said that you discussed with Jamie Heath and Tara Hanks this conversation around whether you personally, and Wayfarer the studio should go with Jen Abel as your publicist. Yes. When she left Jones Works, right? Yes. Objection. And the three of you collectively made a decision around what to do, right? Objection. Yes. Is what you just described to me that you felt, a loyalty to your relationship with Jen as your agent versus the owner of the agency? I don't know if I would, Shapiro objects, characterize it as a loyalty. Okay, sure. Did you and Jamie and Tara ever discuss any other reason to go with Jen Abel when she left Jones Works other than what you just described to me? I think what I just described to you is the majority of the reason. I think there were other micro reasons, but that wasn't the main reason. What were the other micro reasons? It was what we talked about earlier. Just got the feeling that when I had spoken to Steph, Mrs. Jones, during that time with the article and all of that was going on. Also, I just didn't speak to her very much. Jen was really my point person, or Matthew. It would be wonderful if I was your client. You're a wonderful lawyer, and you've been with me. I'd been your client for 4 years, and you left your firm to join Mr. Friedman, and your firm might be great, but I would want to go with you. I mean, that was really the decision. Okay, is it fair to say that your working relationship with Jen never really changed or was interrupted when she left Jones Works? Shapiro objects. I don't know how to answer the question. Okay. You continued to work with Jen Abel as your publicist the day after she left Jones Works, right? And in the week after she left Jones Works, in the month she left Jones Works. Objection. My recollection of her leaving Jones Works was her phone being confiscated and her being met with security and an attorney, and she had been texting me from another number and trying to get her phone. So from that point on, I know we were still dealing with the premiere. We continued to work together, but there was a gap when she didn't have a phone, and I think she was going through a lot. But that gap was a matter of hours or a day, is that right? Objection. Probably, but I believe that if my memory serves me correct, and I could be wrong, I was told that she would be staying on with me and Wayfarer until the end of the press cycle. There's a date, and I believe that this incident happened while we were still within that date. So it was my understanding that she was fulfilling her promise to us. Did you ever feel like she was ever unavailable to you as a publicist during this period of time? I'm not sure that's something I've thought about. Is she still your publicist? I think so. Is she currently Wayfarer's publicist? I don't know. I don't know what we're paying her. I don't know any of those details. Did you have anything to do with any contractual relationship between Jennifer Abel or her agency RWA and Wayfarer or yourself personally? No. Okay. Shapiro, counsel, can we take a break? Sure. 10 minutes? Yeah. Then they go off record. They're actually gone for 20 minutes. And then she comes back and says, okay, I want to talk about the period of the time while you were filming It Ends With Us, and I want to talk about conversations that you had directly with Stephanie Jones during the filming. Okay. Do you recall any conversations that you had directly with Stephanie Jones during filming? I remember she came to visit me on set, which was lovely. Outside of that, I can't recall any moments right now. Do you recall any calls that you had with her during filming where you were concerned or upset about any incidents that had happened on set? Right now I don't. Is it possible that there may have been calls between you and her during filming that you just don't recall right now? Shapiro objects. May I ask a clarifying question? Sure. Do you mean just me and Stephanie Jones? No, I mean between you and Stephanie Jones, whether or not there were other people on the call. Oh, so then I misunderstood. Okay. Oh, sure. Okay. I do remember a call with me, Stephanie Jones, Jen Abel, and I believe Jamie Heath and myself. Okay, tell me what you remember about that. I don't remember when it was. I remember giving them an update on what my experience was like filming the movie. I remember sharing some of the moments of conflict that I'd had with Miss Lively, just how difficult this movie was. I don't remember it being a long conversation. I remember her responses. I don't remember how long the conversation was. What do you remember about her responses? I remember laughing because she got very protective of me and said things that I will not repeat on camera about Miss Lively. And things she's heard about her and Mr. Reynolds. And she talked about a lot about Mr. Reynolds and how terrible he was. And she kind of like was acting like a mum bear. Don't mess with. And I remember that because she was approaching it like she's been around for a long time, so she knows the inside scoop. She's been a publicist for so long. And I think she represented The Rock. And she had said on that call that Mr. Reynolds had like terrorized The Rock or something to that extent. Well, breaching client confidentiality here, Stephanie Jones. Something about a letter. I don't remember the details, but something about like he had written a letter and it was like they wouldn't do press together. I don't know. It was a lot of gossip, but that's why I remember laughing because I was like, just like, oh. Did you feel supported by her on that call? Yeah, as I said earlier, it kind of felt like, oh, don't worry, she's got this and that. It will be fine. The movie's going to come out and it will be awesome. And everybody's had a bad experience with her. It was that kind of call. I'm guessing when he says everybody's had a bad experience with her, he's talking about Blake Lively there. I thought he was talking about Stephanie Jones. Okay. And did you feel like she believed what you were relaying to her about your experiences on set? Yes. I don't remember sharing much, but what I did share, I just shared the truth. And yeah. What do you remember sharing with her about your experiences on set? I specifically remember sharing the situation with our trainer and asking him what he thought Miss Lively might weigh when we shot the scene where I had to pick her up because of my back, and how they then confronted me the next day, and how this trainer evidently then went and told her that I was asking about her weight or something, and then how that became this big thing, and they sat me down, and I just remember her kind of not being able to believe that that was even a thing. I believe I shared with her that I had made a comment about the way Jenny Slate looked in her wardrobe, and then I used the word sexy, and I think she started responding by joking about how, again, I'm not going to. I don't want to. If it's okay, repeat the words that she said, but generalizing the women and their fragility. And I suppose just like that kind of makes a bit of sense, really, because Stephanie Jones, like at the start of this deposition, the conversation was about an article that labeled her as aggressive and tough for a woman, and it makes sense that she would be kind of, sneering a little bit at people like Blake Lively and Jenny Slate who are getting their, selves all up in arms and so on and so forth over ridiculous things like, a pair of trousers being referred to as sexy or, can you tell me how much you weigh? Because I've got to lift you and I just need to prepare my, already broken back. That I could well see Stephanie Jones be like, oh God, fucking wallflowers, something to that effect. Referring to people like Jenny Slate and Blake Lively, and just generally not having time for those ridiculous kind of women. Okay. So Baldoni goes on. And then I think I talked about the wardrobe, how hard it was with the wardrobe, and just that it felt like it was just a very hard experience. Like, that's kind of what I remember. Do you remember sharing with her anything else regarding your experiences on set in that call? And I am, to your frustration, going to pause, move into part 6, because we're getting close to an hour again.